Hey guys, Script Trooper here with another video. I thought this would be kind of funny. Some of the funny stuff that was in some of the original synopsis for the original Star Wars and some of the names and stuff and just where that ended up leading to is always fun. And so I just wanted to talk about it because it's fun to talk about. Lucas produced multiple drafts and synopsis for his sprawling space opera before he arrived at the story that Star Wars fans know and love today. Each permeation of his idea involved some radical changes from the versions that preceded it. As Lucas himself has professed on multiple occasions, it was the process of turning his vast screenplay into a more reasonably sized films that ultimately produced Star Wars in its finished form. Yeah, and that's the thing, is he had a lot of ideas. A ton of ideas. The amount of information that I've just seen, and I haven't even seen that much of it probably compared to a lot of people. But he had a lot of ideas that he put forward and was constantly adding things. And it had to be shrunk down. You just couldn't leave it the way it was. It was just too much. Concepts from Lucas's earlier drafts have been seen influencing modern Star Wars. Early stormtroopers were designed to resemble Ralph McQuarrie's concept art that accompanied those initial drafts. While many of Lucas's early ideas may now sound strange to modern Star Wars fans, it's also easy to see where they've impacted the modern canon. And that's cool, except what they did with it sucks. It's just another well that they're draining dry, right? Whether it's poaching EU stuff or poaching whatever. Anyway, so there were 6 distinct versions of Star Wars that precede the version that we eventually committed to in 1977. The film itself was renamed several times over the course of various drafts. Lucas's original outline titled his space opera The Journal of the Whills Part 1. The Journal of the Whills was an idea to which Lucas would regularly return in his ideas for later installments of the Star Wars saga. By the way, I was always under the impression that the opening crawl was sort of like almost like it was coming from the Whills. I think that made sense to me, like based on the way George described the Whills, right, as the caretakers of the galaxy and the Force and all that other stuff. That's how I always took it. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the Whills per se. I like the Force to be mysterious, but that's how I took it when I realized that's what he was doing. And then in Disney, they're trying to make it that Hu Yang guy is saying the opening crawls. Is that what we're doing now? Somebody was saying that? No. No. And by the way, just a tip for those making the Ahsoka show and any other show, don't make your opening crawl or your opening statement red lettering on black. That's like basic design flaw. You don't put black or red on black because it's hard to see, it's hard to read. If you're going to do that, you at least need to have a relief, like a white outline or something. That's just basic design. So I don't know why they did that. The way it's done in the movies is perfect because it's bright yellow on black. So it's very easy to read and is just easier on your eye, just better in general. But anyways, whatever. Disney does weird stuff. I don't understand. As implied by the title, Lucas has originally envisioned Star Wars as a story that had been recorded by the Whills, a raider he would later identify as microscopic beings who control all life in the universe and essentially are the Force. Oh, there you go. So that would mean those crawls were the Whills. Okay. That's how I took it. This is where he loses me. I'm not trying to get bogged down in this stuff. I want to get to the funny names and stuff. But dude, that's where the mystery was what made it so good. You know, I remember everybody got super mad about the midichlorians. I wasn't even mad about that, actually. I was like, you know what? You can still make it work. You can have that aspect of it, even though it is a mysterious spiritual thing. You can still have that aspect of it and have those two things work in tandem, and I can totally live with that. But making it like the microscopic beings control all life in the universe and are essentially the Force. You guys let me know in the comment section. To me, that takes away. It does. The Whills were to be explored in Lucas's sequel trilogy. Yes, that's correct. He was going to go deep into that. I have a video about that. Later drafts all included the title The Star Wars, sometimes alongside references to the Starkiller or Luke Starkiller. The name Starkiller came up a lot in Lucas's earlier drafts, originally as the surname of brothers Anakin and Deke. Anakin with a different spelling, as well as their Jedi father, Cain. Many fans are aware that Starkiller was at one point Luke Skywalker's surname, though this didn't happen until later drafts. Luke was originally a Skywalker and a general serving Princess Leia. His name became Starkiller in the 2 rewrites immediately preceding the shooting script. Starkiller would become the codename of Darth Vader's apprentice in the video game Force Unleashed, yeah, of course, and the name of the First Order's planet-killing weapon. I'm glad that they got rid of that. I don't think Starkiller is a good name for your hero. I think Skywalker is a way better name. I'm really glad that they changed that. It just exudes hero. Killer, Starkiller. That's more like a villain name to me. Anakin Starkiller would obviously go on to become Anakin Skywalker, being recast as Luke's father rather than his apprentice, as in Lucas's first rough draft of the Star Wars. And it's so different. Man, the ideas that they went through before finally coming up with what they did is pretty immense. And even the shooting script during filming, I did a video about that. There's a guy that has one, and he reads a little bit out of it and stuff. Like, literally, they were shooting the movie, and it's completely different than the shooting script in so many aspects. So they were really tinkering just on a constant basis. And I know a lot of people will bring that up and say, oh, see, George didn't plan everything either, just because Disney didn't plan everything. Okay, you know what, if you want to make that argument, fine. Let's make that argument. I do think he did plan, to an extent. But here's the thing. If you don't plan and it turns out really awesome, then way to go. If you don't plan and it turns out really crappy, then people are going to say, why didn't you plan? Because obviously not planning didn't work for you. Maybe it worked for George to not have a super intense plan. But it didn't work for JJ and it didn't work for Rian Johnson. Sorry. That's the way it is. So of course you're going to say, why didn't you plan it if not planning it made you make a crappy product, right? That's basically what it comes down to. Prior to the introduction of either Anakin or Luke, though, another Jedi was set to take center stage. In Lucas's original outline, this is where it gets kind of funny, the hero of the Journal of the Wills was a Jedi Bendu named Mace Windu. Okay, so we're clear here. They weren't just called Jedi, they were called Jedi Bendu. Now, I know Dave took the Bendu name and gave it to that lore-breaking, balancing the force is equal light and dark character in Rebels, right? Is that big, huge guy? I'm pretty sure that's what he was up to. I don't really remember. I didn't really pay much attention to that show. But he used that name, so they're called Jedi Bendu, and then Mace Windu. And I think that's so funny, because if you think about it, Mace Windu went out the window and flew through the wind to his death. And I don't know if they just subconsciously were thinking about this when they did that scene, but Mace Windu, imagine if they had named him Mace Windu. I don't know, man, that would have just been kind of weird. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm used to Mace Windu, but that's really funny. Mace Windu! Lucas apparently revisited his early drafts while writing the first Star Wars prequel, The Phantom Menace, leading to Windu becoming Windu, while the Jedi Bendu ultimately became the Jedi. The name Bendu would return in Rebels. Yeah, the Bendu existed between the dark and light. Ooh. Many of his original planet names turned up unchanged in the completed Star Wars saga, but were usually given to different planets than originally intended. Yavin was present since Lucas's very first outline, with Yavin 4 ultimately becoming home to the Rebel Alliance's base. Yavin was originally set to play a role in the Journal of the Wills Part 2, and later featured in rough drafts as both a location for the Rebel base. It would also be the homeworld of the Wookiees, who initially played a similar role to that of the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi. Yeah, and I would have been okay with either of those. If Yavin, I like the Kashyyyk though, but I also think, in retrospect, I can live with the Ewoks, whatever, but I can see where people are coming from, where they're like, how realistic is this? And it would have maybe been more realistic if it had been Wookiees. But it would have been a different right, because you wouldn't have had, them worshipping C-3PO, I don't think, and stuff like that. Like, the Wookiees were pretty aware of what was going on in the galaxy, being enslaved and stuff. So, I don't know. To me, I think the Wookiees would have been kind of cooler than the Ewoks. Well, they would have been cooler than the Ewoks and more believable than the Ewoks. But it is what it is. You wanted to introduce a new alien and, wanted to have more variety. Alderaan also featured throughout Star Wars early drafts, not as a planet destroyed by the Empire, but as the Imperial capital, a role that would be taken over, by Coruscant. The various early drafts for Star Wars see the Star Killer family living either on the fourth moon of Utapau or on the planet of Utapau itself. So again, a lot of this stuff he was drawing out of those original drafts for like almost everything, and then certain things, of course, got changed. For the world where Obi-Wan has his final showdown with Grievous in Episode 3. This tangled web of connections between Lucas's earlier notes on Star Wars and the films he created is a fascinating map of the road toward building a modern mythology. I would agree. I think the Windy thing is hilarious, but I do think that this is sort of the way to go in a lot of ways. I don't think it's realistic to... I think you could do a one-off story where you don't do an awful lot of just brainstorming and jot noting and all these little ideas you have popping up in your head. I could see that. But when you're envisioning a larger story that has to be told over a longer period of time and a greater universe, I think that's what you do. I mean, even Tolkien did that all the time. Maybe a little more detailed, maybe a little less jot noted and a little more explanation, but he did that as well. But he's also, from a literary standpoint, he's way out of George's league. But I do think that's the way to go. You can't just wing it like they did with the Disney movies, and it seems to be they've done with some of the shows as well. It's like, dude, you guys look like you're just like half-assing this, and you're not putting the care and effort into it. And I think that's part of the problem. And then, of course, another part of the problem is they just didn't use many of George's ideas. They kind of just took a dump on them. And I'm okay with changing ideas and different things, just like George has done. But to just poop on stuff is where I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're an idiot. At least honor what came before it. You don't have to do exactly necessarily, but at least try to make it decent instead of just gobbledygook nonsense, just typical Hollywood crap movies, you know. But anyways, guys, that's super funny. What do you think of Mace Windu? Let me know in the comment section. If you like this content, please like, subscribe. It always helps the channel. Feel free to check anything else on my channel. Have yourselves a really good day.